We are back with the Lake Sonoma 50-mile preview episode. First impressions, Lake Sonoma is competitively relevant again. I think this is the first time since maybe 2019, pre-COVID, that we have a certified barn burner of a field in front of us to analyze. I'm joined by frequent colleagues, friends, co-conspirators, Brett Hornig and Leah Yingling, to help break all of this down. Leah, what's up in your world right now? It's been a minute since Black Canyon.
Yeah, I've been having fun, working, training, and getting ready for my next race, which will be the Bull Run 50 miler in Virginia next weekend. So recently came off of Way Too Cool, where I had a blast racing against some of my good friends, Katie Asmuth in particular. So just ready to kind of get the season rolling a little bit more.
Right on. I love it. I love the investment in the East Coast trail scene too. Brett, what's up with you?
Taper time. That's all. We're I don't know.
We've made it.
I'm feeling rested. We've made it. We're back.
Are you saying we may have a potential conflict of interest in this analysis episode here?
Oh man, I sure hope so. That would be great. I would love to have a good race at Sonoma. That one's eluded me for a couple tries.
I know in a lot of these pre-race episodes, we talk about why the race is exciting, what it means in the greater context of the sport. For me, I know that there's no Western States or UTMB implications here. It's not like it was in the past, but it is a qualifier for the 80K team in Austria this June. And it's the closest we get to the Olympics in our sport. You grew up watching the Olympics every single year. You rah-rah for your country. There's the team aspect. And I think that this qualifying race to the Worlds in June is the closest thing we have in our sport right now to that. So that's why I get excited. But how about you guys?
Yeah, so I think for me, I loved how competitive Lake Sonoma was for years and years and years. And it was really cool to see kind of people kick off their spring season with a competitive barn burner at Sonoma. So I know there was a lull there through the COVID years and a couple years resurgence after it wasn't bringing the competitive field anymore. But I'm just excited to see there be another competitive 50 miler here in the States again. I have interesting feelings and conflicting feelings about it being the qualifier for a very mountainous worlds team. But I'm sure we can get into that more. However, I'm really excited to see some of the best of the best compete against each other next weekend.
I actually want to get into that too before we get into the men's and women's field. But Brett, what's up with you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost kind of like a nostalgic race. It's like one of the first ultras that I had friends run and compete in. And it kind of turned into, it was like the North Face 50 mile of the spring, where it was very similar fields, whereas one was just kind of at the end of the season and a lot of people were coming in on fumes to the North Face 50 mile. It was kind of the opposite with Lake Sonoma, where it was like all these massive names are going to come, but you never really have any idea how fit anyone's going to be. And it was always just so mind blowing how fast people would run on this course with how difficult it actually is. And it was one of the first early season races that I got to see firsthand where people would just like go for it and completely trash themselves, go to the well and like squeeze every ounce of, effort out of them for this race. So kind of for those reasons and just like the level of competition and the history that the race has, it's been one that I've always wanted to go to.
Yeah. Leah, you mentioned that this may not be the most appropriate race to match what the USA team is going to be facing in Austria in June. I know we're still in this era where COVID kind of messed some things up. And like we had the Thailand event happen last fall and whatever it is, 8 months later, it's happening in Austria. So they had to make some sort of compressed schedule this winter and spring in terms of qualification races. But were there other races out there that come to mind that would have been more specific?
Yeah, that's the problem. There really aren't. Because I think whenever you start to talking about a world's qualifier, you have to eliminate a race at altitude from the conversation to try to even the playing field a little bit. So I think that's where there ends up being some struggles. You would need a really mountainous 50 miler in, let's say, California. So maybe something like, 9 trails, like 9 trails perhaps, or something a little longer than 9 trails, something that's, at sea level, but still has a lot of vert. I think that would be a better option. But Honestly, there's still very few races that come to mind that would be a good qualifier for the world's team. I think we need to go back to the drawing board there.
Oh yeah, Nine Trails is actually that's a pretty good one. I was thinking Sean O'Brien, but Nine Trails is even way punchier.
Oh, Sean O'Brien would be
Um,
decent.
okay,
Hmm.
hot take. Even though I'm racing this in hopes of a world spot, I don't think having a qualifier race is
Oh, I
necessary.
don't think so either. And like that's what France does. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and I was about to say it's not very American to just leave it to the governing body to pick the best team, but I bet I bet the I bet we get a better team out of just 5 applications than a qualifying race and the remaining out of applications. There's Brett's hot take of the episode, just throwing it out there in the first like 5 minutes.
Well, that's the truth too. And like, I mean, we could record a whole episode on this, but I think that's why a country like France does so well is like they pick the best of the best at this distance and at the terrain for this race. And I mean, like we saw 3 women in, I mean, the top 10 easily, maybe the top 5 last year on the world stage at this race because of that. And then our qualifier last year was Broken Arrow, which was, 42K or 46K. So not exactly representative of the 50-mile distance. So yeah, I vote for all resume spots, in my opinion. I agree with you.
I'll say if I got a spot, the system's broken.
Yeah, my last argument too is like I think there's the people who will win this race and that we'll talk about getting podium spots. I think there's a very different group of people in this race who would be our best world's team, and I think those could very well be different results.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Like if you had this exact field for Lake Sonoma, but you got to run it on the world's course this weekend, I bet the podiums are completely different.
Totally. And what's something that's interesting too is the world spot does not roll down. So it's the top 3 at Lake Sonoma get the option to join the world's team. If somebody does not take it, or if somebody's a Canadian like Anne Marie Madden, that spot does not roll down to number 4.
Wait, there's no 5th place roll down. Did I make that up in my
You
head?
made that up in your head. Yeah.
Oh, damn. Okay. All right. All right. Interesting.
Just to make purely to make this interesting and to play devil's advocate, every single year or every single championship after 2023 is going to have a 2-year window. And in that 2-year window, our quote unquote random ballers are going to have a chance to build a resume that's worthy of consideration for this team. And they lose in the current process because they literally had less than 6 months to make a name for themselves between Thailand and Lake Sonoma. And so I do think in this year in particular, the qualification system makes sense for the random ballers out there. But I do agree that after that, it's kind of fair game, because if we didn't have a qualification system, it would bias all the people that made a name for themselves in the sport in like 2017, 18, 19, 21, etc.
Totally. Yeah. And I don't know if we're quite to a point in the sport yet where like the governing body's getting paid off by some company that sponsors some athlete, to make sure that they get on the world's team. I don't know if that kind of corruption's quite there yet, because that's been a problem with like picking Olympic teams for some other countries and some athletes getting left out, for like track and field. But I don't know if I quite see that happening to like the world mountain running team quite yet.
I was just going to correct myself because Anne Marie Madden is probably a bad example. I think if there's like a Canadian in the top 4 spots, let's say, or top 3 spots, it would roll down. But if somebody denies their spot, like a U.S. Candidate, it would not
Mm-hmm.
roll down.
And then
So
that just goes to another application.
correct. Yep.
Okay.
I want to throw this hypothetical out to both of you for all the resume builders out there that aren't doing Lake Sonoma and trying to qualify automatically. Let's take an Eric LaPuma, for example, who had an excellent race in Thailand last year. Is there anything that he could have done in between Thailand and Austria this year to actually hurt his chances? Like, he had a phenomenal race at Chuckanut, but it was a third. It wasn't a win at a race he was probably capable of winning on a certain day. Does that actually hurt his chances if he applies for the team and goes for a resume spot?
I don't think so. I think
Yeah,
something
I don't think
that,
so.
yeah, I think like the priority for a world's team is like consistency. And I think that's something Eric LaPuma has is consistency. So, and I think that 3rd place, 4th place shows that, that he could still be at the front of the pack. So yeah, I don't think that necessarily hurts anyone's chances.
Okay, I'm just looking at our list here. A couple other things that we want to cover. Is there really?
Prize money. There is prize money at Sonoma this year. Oh yeah, they're paying out a fifth. We got $2,000 for the winner, and then 1,000, 750, 500, 250. So that's kind of cool. Kind of cool to see them putting, just a little bit of incentive on the line as well, or at least just like a thank you for winning our race.
Yeah, that is cool. I feel like we don't actually see it go 5 deep very often, so that's nice to see.
Yeah, and I think these fields are actually deep enough where paying out to fifth, that makes sense. I don't think that's excessive.
One other thing that I wanted to cover before we get into the women's and men's fields, Leah, I'm curious to get your take here first. How different do you think the men's and women's 80K teams are going to look this year compared to last year? Like, how many returners are we going to see, and how many open slots are we going to see?
I think they are going to be entirely different 80K teams. Let's say with the exception of maybe one person on each team might be the same. I think entire 80K team will be different. So maybe one person's the same, but 4 are going to be different people, which I think is going to be very cool. We're seeing an interesting mix of where the competition's going this year. And it's, early season golden ticket races. It's formidable. It's like Chuck and Nut, way too cool. Gorge this past weekend. And yeah, one of my biggest takeaways from doing this research is I feel like the women's race here is more stacked than the women. There's just as many women that are like competitive names on the start line as there are men, if not more, which is interesting given the makeup of races historically. Like you look at any start line and it's usually 75 to 80% men, 20 to 25% women. And the fact that I could probably pull more competitive women's names in this race just completely stood out to me, which I think speaks to the time that women are having in ultra running right now.
Yeah, that is super cool. Yeah, it's, well, shoot, I had a good question lined up. And now that I'm looking at the field, I'm like, wow, you're right. These are incredible. It was surprising to me. This is more people than I thought there would be to show up to try and qualify for the World's team.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how many people are doing this race, Lake Sonoma, because there's going to be so many resumes getting thrown into the mix for the race that they feel like, yes, I'm a great runner in this sport, but maybe I'm not. Maybe resume is not enough here, and I need to get on this start line as a opportunity to further pad the chances.
Yeah, and all these people are like foregoing their shot at canyons for, like a last chance golden ticket race, or maybe even just securing that top 10 spot to get into OCC, CCC, or UTMB. So I don't know. I just thought it was kind of cool that there seems to be momentum building towards the popularity of the World Championships. And I don't know if it's just that it's on my radar now more in like the recent year or two than like pre-COVID, but it seems like worlds are getting kind of cool.
I agree. And I think I want to say a large part of that has to do with the increased media following around the race last year, and also how much hype was around it, given that it had to be postponed a year. And I think there's just so much energy with the combining the events for the first time ever. I think also with like Instagram being the place it is these days, where like it looks very different than it did probably the last time we sent a World's team. So a lot more people are on social media these days. Information's getting out there. And I think people really caught the bug with the last World's event.
Let's talk about this women's team. The women's field at Lake Sonoma. Analysis, predictions, picks, etc. Leah, do you have any interesting ways of organizing the field like you did last time for our Black Canyon picks?
As a matter of fact, I do.
All right. We're banking on that.
My first headlining topic is a CCC reunion. So we've got the top 15 from CCC. We had, when I was out at UTMB this year, I just kept speaking to the fact of like all the North America. We had 10 North Americans in the top 25, in the women's field at CCC. We have 3 of the women from the top 15 who are running Lake Sonoma, which I think is really exciting because I think anybody that can run in the top 15 at CCC is a fantastic candidate for the world's team, and also likely would perform well at Lake Sonoma. So that includes Hannah Allgood, Erin Clark, and Tara Fraga. I think, oh gosh, I don't want to get their positions wrong, so I won't try, but I think I'll try. Erin was 7th, I think, Tara 11th, Hannah 14th. Is that right?
Yeah, the only one I don't have written down is Hannah's, but the 7th and 11th was correct.
Okay. So that's okay. That's storyline number 1, and I can dive into each of those athletes if you want. But then my storyline number 2 are those people who narrowly missed a spot at Formidable 50K to be on the world's 40K team this year. And that includes Claire Rhodes, who was in a very, very close 3rd place to Kimber Maddox and MK Sullivan. And those are 2 of our very most impressive 50K runners in the United States right now, if not our 2 best mountain 50K runners. So the fact that Claire Rhodes, who was honestly a newer name for me at Mammoth Trail Fest this year, I think she's making a splash, and it's really cool to see her coming for another world spot here at Lake Sonoma. And Allison Baca was 4th place at Formidable, and then Christina Randrup was 5th. So we have 3, 4, and 5 from Formidable, given the 50 miler a shot. So that's a cool storyline. And we've also got, I feel like I come back to this topic every single recording, but our fast roadie trail converts, which is Sarah Beal and Sarah Cummings, who have both been JFK 50 mile champs. Both of those 2, Sarah Beal with the course record and Sarah Cummings with the 3rd fastest time at JFK. So both have the leg speed and both have thrown down in trail races. So we know that they can have a shot at Sonoma. And then some mountain crushers like Sarah Kais, Emily Schmitz, and Abby Levine. And then I have my whole category of up and comers like I do in every race. And it's like Shea Aquilano, Natalie Sandoval, Lindsay Herman. And then I've also put Christina Randrup in that category as well.
Can you talk for a bit, because we were talking offline, or we were texting offline about Sarah Kai's training and how that really stood out for us. And she's been a strong runner in the sport for many years, but it looks like she's put a lot of effort and soul into this training block. So maybe give the audience some insight into what's been going on there.
Yeah, her training came on my radar probably about 2 months ago when I was glancing. When I want to waste time, I just go to like race entrance list and I'm like, oh, who's racing? And I saw that Sarah Kais was racing this, and I was like, oh, I wonder what her training's been looking like, because she lives in upstate New York, and I'm sure training through a winter in upstate New York is no easy feat. So I started to glance at her training, and I know she was coached by David Roach at some point. I don't know if she's still coached by him. And her training is phenomenal. She's not super high mileage, but every single run she does is top notch and really high quality, and her workouts are big and she nails them. So I think like many runs of the week, she's throwing down, 10 to 16 milers at 6:30, 6:40 pace regularly. And then we'll do a long run. I think one of the most notable long runs I saw from her was like 25 and a half miles with 4,000 feet at 7:20 pace and like a gap pace of 6:30. And no stop time. So she's crushing it. I am really excited to see what she does. I know she's had a lot going on in her personal life this last 6 months or so. So I think it's probably a lot of energy that she's just really invested in her training. And she's somebody that's just been able to prove that she can battle it out on a mountain course, can battle it out in a faster course. She got a golden ticket at Black Canyon a couple years back. So I think I know she's not a dark horse, but she hasn't been in the conversation recently. And she's kind of my dark horse pick for Lake Sonoma, just with how incredible her training has been looking.
Right on. Brett, any thoughts from Leah's list?
I mean, that was so much more complete than my list. I mean, I've got a lot of similar names written down, but not quite categorized as well. I'm curious so it's going to be a little bit warm on race day. That high it's continued to creep up. So now we're looking like mid to high 70s by race day. how much is that going to affect this field and where these people are training and coming from? Because yeah, I feel like, even it's a 6:30 start time, but it does heat up relatively early over there. So even by 10 or 11 o'clock, it'll feel kind of warm. And on the way back, it'll definitely feel hot. So how many people who are still in winter are going to just get blasted with heat, and also probably seasonal allergies because everything's blooming like crazy over there?
Yeah, I don't think
Because there's a lot of people coming from the
there's a
mountains.
lot of people coming from the mountains. I don't think there's a ton of people who have been training in the heat or desert. I think Natalie Sandoval she trains in Arizona, and she's one of the only women on that side that comes to mind. But I think you do need to be doing some type of heat training or sauna training, maybe like semi regularly, to have a slight advantage in this, because I think even if it's 72 degrees is going to feel hot.
Yeah, totally. I mean, fortunately, there will be some big water crossings on the course this year. I mean, they still haven't really officially said that they're going to run the full course. Yeah, and we're recording on April 2nd. I think they said Monday they'd make a call. They're planning on having the full course ready, because there's some massive water crossings where they're like building bridges.
Yeah, and I think you can speak to this probably a little bit more intelligently than I can, Brett, but I do think it's a ever so slightly altered course from past years. I think there's like a section either in the beginning or the end that's not quite the same, and I think they took out a little out and back to an aid station that used to exist.
Yeah, so is the very so I guess the differences on this course that they changed. So they changed the entire start and finish area. The race starts in a different parking lot this year. So the race starts about like 2 miles down from where the race originally started. So you actually start on it's a pretty beefy climb. It's like 800 feet or 700 feet in the first 2 miles, and it's all on road. And that's just to let the race spread out before dropping into the trail. That allowed them to eliminate that out and back on what was the last aid station. In previous years, you didn't have to do the out and back on the way out. You did have to do it on the way back. But now that aid station's pushed right up to the trail, so there's no out and back anymore. And then at the turnaround, you used to do this little lollipop sort of thing, and it's much more of just you're out and immediately turn around. They shortened that part as well, because I think they actually needed to shave off a little bit of distance. So yeah, and then the race now finishes. It doesn't finish on the road coming down. It finishes on a even steeper single track trail as you just fly straight down into the parking lot. So now it's got this steep downhill finish. Time wise, I could see the course maybe being a little bit slower, especially with just how the conditions are. I mean, the entire course has been destroyed this entire winter. They've gotten so much rain over there. And then even a couple weeks ago when they did their course training runs, they couldn't even run the full course because there's a big drainage at mile 13, and it was like 30 feet wide or something like that. So still a couple question marks about the course, but they're planning on running the main one as of right now.
Leah, going back to those categories you listed off for the runners, who are some of the strongest contenders within those categories in your mind? Are you pulling any particular list from each one into a potential top three?
Yeah, oh gosh, that's a hard question because I'm pulling people from every category. I think our CCC reunion group we're going to see 2 podium spots, I think, out of that group. And then I think the third podium spot's going to be a grab bag between my narrowly missed a spot at Formidable and my Mountain Crushers. So I don't know if we're going to go through who we see on our podiums yet, but I think I can definitely see one of those podium spots going to Claire Rhodes, Allison Baca, who narrowly missed spots at Formidable, and then kind of between Sarah Kai's. Oh, and I don't know if I mentioned Emily Schmitz. She's had a top 5 spot at OCC in the past. So I think she lives abroad. So we don't hear about her a ton in the US, but super strong runner for Hoka who has had extreme success in the mountains. So I think she's a candidate who would make a great teammate for the world's team, but perhaps Lake Sonoma might not be her strength. I don't really know. But yeah, that was a name that came to mind. But I think CCC reunion group is who I'm holding up pretty high here, and that's Hannah Allgood, Aaron Clark, and Tara Fraga.
Is there any love for random ballers out there in the women's field? Could this be a race where the ultra running community is introduced to a few new names?
I don't, unless you're not familiar with Claire Rhodes and Allison Baca, who might be like the least familiar names in the field. I don't think there's going to be any space for a random baller in this race.
And I guess that would kind of be a true random baller, is we shouldn't know about them yet, Finn.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
Yeah, like how can I call a random baller? That's the whole point. They're supposed to surprise me.
If you do the deepest research possible, they appear.
Yeah, I guess that's true. They are on the entrance list.
Leah, what are your picks?
Okay.
Who's taking the not golden tickets, but who's taking the entries to Austria?
Oh, this is hard. Okay. So let's do podium here. And I'm going to start number 3. I have Hannah Allgood getting 3rd place. And I'm excited for Hannah's race because I think the world's team is what really speaks to her. And her training has just been absolutely incredible. She had a great 2022 where I think she really came onto the radar of a lot of fans of ultra running with a huge race at Gorge 100K last year. Race CCC, and I know she didn't have quite the day she wanted to have there. And her goal this year, her A goal is 100% to get back on that CCC start line and have her day. So I'm excited to see her do that. And I think making the world's team is step 1 in achieving that. So she raced Black Canyon this year and had to pull out a portion of the way through that race. So I think all of her training is leading in this direction. And I think she's going to pull out a podium spot. Number 2, I'm just going to make this decision right here. I'm going to say Claire Rhodes. I don't know how much, this might be her first 50 miler. One of you guys could probably fact check me on that. I just think the way she raced with Kimber and MK all day at Formidable speaks a lot to the athlete she is. And I'm really excited to see her putting her name in another competitive field. I think she really excels in the mountains and with the hilly stuff that Lake Sonoma will offer. So I think she'll be a surprise on the podium. And then winning the race, I've got Erin Clark. Huge Erin Clark fan over here. I know she applied for the world's team last year and I don't think made it via resume. And I know that was a goal of hers coming into this year. And just the way I saw her race CCC last year, it was incredible. She was in the mix all day long. She battled. And I mean, if Zach Miller, has a Zach Miller-esque finish. I think she ended up having a sprint finish. I want to say like Meg McKenzie in the CCC finishing stretch and just like gutted it out. So I think Erin is, naturally probably the fastest woman in the field. I know she's got a 33-minute 10K to her name when she raced for Colorado. So I think she has all the tools. Like we've seen her succeed extraordinarily on the world stage at CCC. Combine that with her leg speed. She's been throwing down in a Missoula winter. I think she's going to have an amazing day.
Mine's a little different. Okay, so 3rd place, I've got Sarah Kais to start the podium. Yeah, kind of like you guys totally convinced me after when we were texting, just talking about her training. I went back and looked at it and I was like, oh, yeah, this is very good. Yeah, shameless plug, Trails and Tarmac's newest coach, great coach. In 2nd, I've got Hannah Allgood for a lot of the reasons you said, Leah, where it's like, yeah, it sounded like her heart just kind of wasn't in there for Black Canyon, but then ultimately that turned into kind of a great training run. You don't get totally 100K trashed. She was able to jump back into her training and it's looked fantastic. And then I also had Erin Clark to win the race. Yeah. So
nice.
Either we're both right or we're both wrong. How does that make you feel that we both picked the same?
I'm nervous. Winner? No, I feel good about this.
Yeah, I'm getting better.
Yeah, Erin had a great workout recently where she did like mile repeats with like, I think a couple minute recovery at like 5:20, 5:30, maybe 5:30 something. I don't know. It was awesome. She's super fast. And I think yeah, she's doing a lot of solid workouts leading into this too. So I think she knows exactly what the Lake Sonoma course requires. So I have faith in that number 1 pick, Britt.
Okay, cool.
I am certainly adding nothing novel or controversial to the mix here. At number 3, I have Erin Clark. Leah, I love the CCC reunion classification. So Erin Clark at 3, Hannah Allgood at 2. I still can't get over the fact in a good way that she is an ultra runner that watches game film. That is amazing to me. And then Sarah Kai's number 1. I'll take her number 1.
Nice.
Got to give her love. East Coast crusher, getting it done in the frozen tundra that is Lake Placid, New York. Veteran of the sport, and it looks like she's just having the training of her life. So those 3. One thing I will add to the discussion here before we get to the men's field, I think it'd be fun to speculate on people that have thrown potential resumes into the mix versus people that are trying to qualify here. My sources, I'm using sources plural, have told me that Claire Gallagher really wants to be on this team. Jen Lichter really wants to be on this team. So like they might be throwing resumes in. I've heard Georgia Porter. I've heard Kelly Wolf. If this podium, like Sarah Kai's, Hannah Allgood, Erin Clark team joins some of those resume people, Leah, do you think that this team is capable of winning a gold medal at the 80K in Austria?
What? Oh yeah, 100%. I either dreamt about this last night or I had a conversation with like Mike regarding this, but like I could dream up a world's team from this race, like 3 people from this team combined with Claire and then one of the other names that you just mentioned. And that is 100% a gold medal team at the World's 80K. Is
there any part of you that would renege on your Western States entry and throw your resume into the mix?
It would be like if a Western States doesn't happen or I hear like word that it wouldn't happen, something like that, then I'd put my resume in for the World's team. Yes. But no, I wouldn't back out on Western States. It would be a just in case type of entry.
Western States is still Bay.
Yeah. Mike was trying to convince me to do both, and I was like, bad idea.
It's a way tougher double this year because there's only 2 weeks, like 2 weeks in between. I think the last time it was like nicely doable. Well, not nicely, but doable-ish was, I think, 2016 when it was in Annecy. There was like 3 weeks or
nice.
3.5 weeks in between. So that helps. That makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I feel like you could maybe get away with the 40K event and then 2 weeks later turning around with Western States, but I wouldn't go higher than the marathon.
Yeah, I know. I was initially like, maybe I should try on a 40K option, but bad idea. One last point.
I'd 100% do both.
One last point I did want to make, and Brett, you could probably speak to this because you have run Sonoma before, right?
Yeah, twice.
Okay. Sonoma is death by 1,000 hills. So like we didn't talk about the vert profile and distance and things like that, but yeah, it's like 10,000 feet. And these climbs aren't long, gradual climbs. There are a lot of punchy 100 to 400 foot climbs over and over and over again. So something that you do need to come to Sonoma with is like seasoned quads and the ability to really resist like all that pounding mile after mile after mile. And one of my, I didn't mention them in my top 3, but Allison Baca is somebody that I think is in that podium potential because like her vert and her ability to descend is unlike no other. I got to run a little bit with her at Western States training camp last year, and she ran Western States, and I'm just peeking at her training here. And she has a March 25th, a 20 miler with 8,400 feet of climbing. So wow. I feel like she's somebody that's going to have like the most seasoned quads coming into Sonoma. And I could see that very much favoring somebody who has come into Sonoma with that style of training.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a massive run. But yeah, I mean, there's like legitimately well over 100 climbs and descents on this race, which it's hard to find anything that you can train on that's, really like that. Cause if you do the same exact hill over and over, that's different because all the hills are different sizes and slightly different gradients. And this is the easiest race to go out too hard on because the climbs on the way out don't seem that big. You can pretty much always see the top of it, and you get that big mental win when you can see the top of the climb. But for most of the climbs on the way out, for how fast people are going, like if they put the blinders on and just looked straight down and felt the incline and was like, if I'm doing a 50 mile with 10,000 feet of climbing, should I be going this hard on the climb right now? And the answer is almost always no. But because they can see the top of the climb, they're like, oh, I can just surge right up to it. Same thing with going back down. You stride out because you're like, oh, I'm just about to hit the bottom. Then when you turn around and come back, all of the climbs, they're massive all of a sudden. They've all grown by like a factor of 10, but the descents didn't get any bigger. So now you're super gassed at the top of the climb. You descend and you're on the next climb before you're anywhere near recovered and ready for it. So then you end up having the snowball effect of getting just worse and worse and worse every climb on the way back. And that's why you see some people positive splitting by like 1-2+ hours, which I think I'm in that hour plus positive split from my first go at Sonoma.
Brett, I took the liberty of essentially copying Leah's format and made a couple of different categories of runners. Should I lead us into the men's field, or do you want to take us there?
No, go for it. I slacked on my list. I have no categories. I've just got bullet points underneath people.
Leah, they say imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. So here I go.
Mm-hmm.
First category, you have what I call the emergence of a newish generation of trail runners. So people like Aubrey Meyer, Seth Ruling, Matt Seidel, Preston Cates, Chris Myers, Caleb Olson, Joey DeFeo, Trayson Knopp. These guys are all between the ages of 23 and 28. They're probably going to be competitive for the next 10 to 15 years. And this, to me, is like the start of their career. They're all potential rising stars. So I think we talked offline about how there's not a lot of like immediate firepower in this race in terms of like the Walmsleys and the Petermans of the world. But I think these are the types of guys that will be like what Tyler Green is right now, 10 years on in the sport. Then you've got what I call the current guard. I also kind of put Seth Ruling in this camp, but also Drew Holman, Morgan Elliott, Ryan Miller, Brett, I'm throwing you in there. I was going to have Stephen Kirsch in there, but I guess he pulled out last minute. These are all guys that have either been around the sport for a while or they've registered some really big results, and they're just slightly older than the previous group. Some star power here. I think that this group is led by Drew Holman. I was going to say about Kirsch, like I think this was going to be a great chance for him to have a really overwhelmingly impressive day. Maybe he'll do that later on down the road this spring. But anyways, same thing with Ryan Miller. Like maybe this is a chance for him to shake off a slightly disappointing result from Black Canyon. I also put Rich Lockwood in this group. Like I'm really curious to see, like, he had a great 2022, but this will by far be the most competitive field he's raced in his career. So how does he fare? And then the other group I have is what I'm calling the older guard. And this is Eric Sorensen, Charlie Ware, Jason Schlarb, Mario Mendoza, Chad Trammell. These are all guys in their mid to late 30s. They've been around the sport for quite some time. You have people like Eric Sorensen who have podiumed at Speed Goat as early as last year. Charlie Ware, a multi-time Golden Ticket winner, Western States guy. Jason Schlarb, household name. So those are my categories. And anyways, honor to you, Leah, but figured I'd kick us off there.
Hey, I like that.
What do you think, Brett?
Yeah, I mean, those are great categories. If we're diving deeper into it, do you see one of these categories having an advantage over the other? One being like the seasoned experience, but maybe not necessarily in like that quote unquote physical prime anymore, or the young people with less experience, way more race miles in their bodies, etc. Who does this course play to better?
This is just my guess. I think that this is going to be a 6 to 6.5 hour race, probably 6.5 hours given the course conditions next Saturday. And to me, when you're looking at a 6.5 hour race that's pretty runnable, I feel like you can be that younger, more brash runner who might make a mistake or two at like mile 35 to 40 and still not totally pay the price. Like you can still kind of hang on by a thread at the 6 hour mark. So I personally lean towards that younger group. Like we can talk about our top threes in a second, but mine is kind of front loaded with this newish generation group.
I would argue that yes, that strategy can work for 6.5 hours, but when you put heat into the mix,
yeah,
that's when these new guys will probably start to falter a little bit. So yeah. Just thought.
That's very true. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that the race starts on an uphill and not a downhill. Like, did you guys see those opening splits from the Formidable 50K?
Oh, it was
Like
disgusting.
the men's lead pack, their first full mile was like 4:40, which 4:40, not 5:40. Like it's gross. So I'm hoping that, the first 2 miles, like being so much uphill allows for a slightly steadier start. Kind of get like the nerves, the excitement out of the way, and then people are more chill by the time they hit the trail. But I mean, that's probably not going to happen. But yeah, I mean, my first year that I ran Lake Sonoma, I mean, Carl Meltzer blew by me at like mile 42, like to the point where I like heard someone coming off. I mean, I just like stepped off the trail and he like looked by me like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you not even trying to race me? You goon. So yeah, I mean, this course can really go to anyone, but you have to be a little bit smart. But I think you can get away with being a little bit dumb because it's not 100K, which the debate has always gone. Do you treat this race like a long 50K or a short 100K? Because those are two pretty different strategies.
I think if there was no heat, to Leah's point, I would treat it like a long 50K, but with the presence of heat, maybe a short 100K.
Yeah.
How you...
I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I was about to ask, how are you going to treat it?
I want to go into it like the same way I did Javelina, where I'm just going to use the first few miles to feel out like what's going on and then just kind of react off of it.
I think that's the way to do it in a race. Like at
I'm
least
just going to go.
steep.
I'm just going to go with the gut. Yeah, I'm just going to go with the gut and race and try my best not to fall off that 30-foot log at mile 13. Get eaten by alligators.
We should share that photo in the notes, Finn.
Yes.
Yeah, it's on the Healdsburg Run Company. It's on their Instagram of one of the water crossings at mile 13. Everyone should check that out because that will be exciting.
Yeah, it looks like straight out of like an amusement park.
Yeah, full on log rolling competition.
Shameless ad drop here. If you're taking ketones in the middle of the race, your brain space is going to be so dialed that log crossing is going to be nothing. You're going to be, every foot strike is going to be absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I'm banking on that. I got ketones, the Morton bicarb.
That's right.
Oh,
I don't know, hydrogels. We'll be full nutritional robot.
We'll throw in some goo energy there too.
Oh yeah, give me all the stuff.
Leah, are there any athletes for you on the men's side that stand out?
Oh gosh. Well, yes, I agree with all of your rankings and categorization. I will preface this spiel with, I feel like Drew Holman was robbed in 2022 of UROY top 10 status.
Yes.
100%.
100%. Highway style.
I'm just putting that out there before I go into my depth and analysis here. Like Drew Holman, I mean, his results in 2022, for those of you listening, I'm just going to rattle them off because it was incredible. He got third place, very close third place at Ultra Trail Cape Town to close his year, which was a huge international result and like an impeccably run race. I love how Drew races. He runs intelligently, but also competitively the entire time. I feel like he really knows himself. And every race he did last year, we saw that he got, was it fifth place at Western States? I think a second place to John Ray at Quad Rock 50 by like just a few minutes. And then also a top spot at Chuckanut last year too. So like all very competitive races, great results, like within minutes of the leader in all these races. He didn't win any of those, but like incredible races that 100% deserved to be in the top 10 for the men's UROY. So I'll get down off of that horse, but I think, I gotta add to it. Yeah, add to it, please.
So I just watched, first of all, thank you so much for bringing up this immense injustice in the ultra running community. I just watched this Netflix documentary about the Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 that went down, disappeared. No one knows where it went. This is how I feel about Drew's UROY vote. Where did it go? No one knows. It should be there. We should have found it by now, but it's not there.
Very similar comparison. Like I can't think of a more similar comparison.
Sorry, I was just top of the dome.
Anywho, yeah, I think I personally think this is Drew Holman's race to lose. I think his training's incredible. He had this, I forgot to write it down in my notes, but this Gold Hill in Boulder run on, I think, like March 23rd to 25th, sometime recently, where, I mean, he ran 20 some miles with 4,000 to 5,000 feet of vert and just like 5 something pace on all the downhill miles, 6 something pace on all the uphill miles, took a Boulder crown with a very stacked top 10. I think he took that Strava crown from David Roach, and the top 10 has people like Matt Daniels, Hayden Hawks, Adam Mary, Justin Grunwald, just incredible. So I think this course really suits him, like long, runnable. He's good with vert. I think he's going to be stellar.
Question.
Yeah.
So if Drew does really well at this race, what's his future race plan?
That's a great question.
Like,
because he's the only
really
person in this field that is also on Western States entrance list.
Yeah. And he's not really known to be like a prolific racer.
No, and that's something that I really like about his racing. And that's why last year was such an injustice. He picked and chose wisely, raced incredibly in every single race, and yeah, not top 10 usually.
Maybe Drew's going to do the like, this will be the last year of ultra running I ever do if I don't make the Uruguay off of Lake Sonoma. He's
like the Barry Sanders
Western
of ultra running.
States. Yes. Like he's got to get that win. Like Drew might just end up racing like 1,000 miles of ultras this year at like a hyper competitive level. I bet he still gets left off the Uruguay.
Yeah, I feel like Drew could care less. He's like the nicest, most humble guy alive, so doesn't even think about these things. I feel like we just all feel the injustice for him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So assuming then that he's going to go back and run Western States. So are we like, is he going to rob someone of a world spot at Lake Sonoma?
Potentially. Yeah, potentially.
Yeah,
and maybe this just forces it to the predicament.
Defense Drew.
Yeah. But maybe this is just forcing it to what we talked about, is like having the best world's team as resume spots. So maybe he just wants us to have the best world's team.
He's doing it to get someone else to get picked.
Yes. Oh.
Okay. Yeah, I can play up some scenarios in my head that are interesting off of that. Like he's playing defense for someone who submitted an application.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, wow.
Let me think.
Finn was right about the airline thing. Like the conspiracy theories are flying wild around Drew Holman.
It was a perfect reference.
Oh my gosh. Crazy.
Can I say one more person?
Oh yes.
Can I give them a feature?
Oh yeah, but I have somebody I want to give a feature to. If it's the same person.
Oh, it's probably the same person. Go ahead.
Yeah, Caleb Olson. Caleb Olson I mean, I'm biased, and I will scream my biases from the rooftop. But yeah, Caleb's been crushing the training. He was the top American at CCC last year. Finn, what place was he?
13th.
Amazing.
But ran like PR'd by an hour too.
Yeah, and he did. Oh wow. Yeah, Mike helped me with some of my notes here, and he said Caleb will look very handsome in a USA kit. Thanks, Mike. And he told me
yes.
I needed to read that. But he was the top American this past year, just ahead of Stephen Kirsch at CCC. Ran Red Mountain 55K recently in St. George, Utah. Like 7-minute pace-ish for 35 miles of 4,000 feet. Really good with vert and speed, a combo of everything. And he's another person similar to Allison Baca. Just threw down another really vert-heavy run recently on our local mountain from the valley floor in Salt Lake, Mount Olympus, by doing a double a couple weekends back. So he did a 21 miler with 10,000 feet. So I think Caleb's going to be coming to the start line with some seasoned quads, and I think that's going to serve him quite well the longer the race goes on.
Perfect description. I love Mike's addendum that he's a very photogenic person that will do great with USA running branding. One thing I'll say about Caleb.
Future roommate for Lake Sonoma weekend as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. One thing I'll say about Caleb, and I'll illustrate it with a quote from Wheezy F Baby. The F stands for franchise. The quote is, "Real G's move in silence like lasagna." And that describes Caleb to a T. He doesn't spray on social media. He's not going to tell you he's the best. He's just going to go out there and he's going to take care of it on the course. And there's going to be a ton of narrative violations because you're going to have all these people out there that are supposed to win. And Caleb is going to come up and just eat him up in the second half of the race. And I think that was what's going to happen at Lake Sonoma. So he may be a random baller in the eyes of some people, but his resume is stout. And I think he deserves to be at the top of the field by the end of this race next Saturday.
Beautifully put.
That was, part of me wants to take the microphone away from you, but then part of me really enjoys you having the microphone. So you can keep saying stuff like that.
It's his creative outlet.
Yeah, it's something. Can we talk a little bit about historic times here so we know what we're shooting for next weekend?
Yeah. Okay. Wait, so I'm going off the top of my head, but I think it's all disappeared from Ultra Sign Up. I'm on the wrong website. Jim Walmsley has gone under 6 hours, and he's the only sub 6. I think he also has the second fastest time at like 6:03, 6:04, and then
that was a Jared
Hazen. Jared Hazen has the third fastest, I believe, also in the 6:00s. And then on the ladies' side, I thought that the course record was still Stephanie Howe.
Mm-hmm. And I think Keely Henninger ran a close second fastest time there a couple years back.
Okay, Jim Walmsley 5:51, Jim Walmsley 6 flat, Jared Hazen 6:08. And then on the ladies' side, Stephanie Howe 7:08, Keely Henninger 7:13, Yeo Wang 7:14, and then Cassie Scallon 7:22.
Okay.
I bet this course is probably a little bit slower.
I think so too.
Than it used to be.
I'd say
and it's just it's just beat up.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it's like by nature of like the kind of adapted course. I think it's at least 5 minutes slower, just by having more single track, less cruisy, double track or road or whatever it was. And then I think conditions this year would probably slow it down by another 5 minutes or so.
Yeah,
5 to 10.
Yeah, I would say so. And yeah, I mean, this has got to be one of the more stout, just record books across most like ultras. I mean, it's a pretty established race. I mean, it's been around. At least the results archive goes back to 2008. But I mean, just looking at some of the top names, for people that there's people who've raced at Lake Sonoma and had success here have gone on to have very good trail and ultra running careers. Like beyond Cassie Scallon, like Casey Lichtag, Anime Flynn, Emily Torrance, Addie Bracey, Camille Herron, Magda.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a lot of really good people. Like who is going to etch their name in these history books? We got Zach Miller, Rob Crawer, Sage Canaday, Tom Evans,
wow.
Dakota Jones. They've all run well at this race.
And we should add that this used to be a golden ticket race back in the day.
Yeah.
So that was probably a big attraction for some of those big names then too.
Absolutely. And I feel like this field is definitely approaching golden ticket level field. I mean,
yeah.
Is it a hot take to say that this field is more competitive than the current Canyons 100K field?
Not a hot take.
Not a hot
True.
take. Yeah, very true.
That's a cold take. That's an obvious take.
It's just a take.
Yeah. And like that's interesting to me.
Yeah, and it just makes me wonder, like there's so much competition this time of year, how much all these races are pulling competition too, in my opinion, from each other.
Should I pivot to Canyons?
I think this is the third most competitive race of the year. I think it's probably Western States, then Black Canyon, and then this race. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, Western States hasn't happened yet, so this will be number 2 until Western States. But
when it all shakes out,
I think Black Canyon's field is still better than this one, but
I think
not by too much.
No, I think the women's field is very comparable to the Black Canyon women's field.
Yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm. Men's field at Black Canyon slightly more competitive, but very similar, honestly.
Yeah, which is great. I just didn't think that an early season race, not a golden ticket race, would be this competitive. And perhaps that also just is saying something about just the magnitude that like ultra running, like American, North American ultra running's out right now, is there's that many people who are that good where they can actually be spread apart across non-golden ticket races, world's races, and actually still field like a great Western States, a great world's team. Yeah, the sport's growing. Maybe there is room for everybody.
Brett, who's your podium?
Well, I didn't actually write one.
we weren't gonna do Brett having picks.
I could write I could create like a if I wasn't racing, who's on my podium sort of podium.
Yeah, do that.
Which I'm kind of. So I was gonna go Drew Holman, Seth Ruling, Eric Sorensen. That was first, second, third.
Nice.
Sorry, reverse that order from the ladies.
I've got Ryan Miller at number 1. I feel like he's going to be on a redemption tour here, looking to get the result he was looking for at Black Canyon. So I got him winning this race. I know we didn't talk about him much during that discussion, but he's a real talent. Drew Holman in second, Caleb Olson in third.
Okay. I'll go back. I'm just going to do 5 because no.
You got 5.
Yeah, I'll go 5.
Don't got 5 on it.
You don't want to? I'm not going 5.
She got 5 on it.
I'm gonna go top down. Okay, I got Drew winning. I've got Ryan Miller with the redemption run. I love watching Ryan Miller race. He's just amazing, and it's always like so emotional watching him cross the finish line. And I'm a huge Ryan fan, and I think he's gonna have a great day at Sonoma. And I know he wants to make the world's team. I've got Caleb Olson in third, and I've got Brett Hornig always being the bridesmaid in fourth here. And I've got some good notes here.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I've got some Mike McMonagle notes in my spreadsheet. He wrote, one does not simply split 6:25 halfway at Javelina and not run at least a similar time at Lake Sonoma. It's a nice take.
Yes.
And then he said either his fourth place 13:45 at Javelina was a huge breakout, or the rest of his racing resume is a bunch of chokes. So take that.
Are we talking about me right now? 6:25 on the Sonoma course is better than 13:45 at Javelina.
You think?
In my opinion.
You think?
I do.
Oh.
Yes.
I don't know.
I think, well...
It was the ketones. It was the ketones.
I think Mike's partially right. It's not that I choked at all I ran to my best of my ability at most of those other races. I was just like not training that well. I think Javelina was the first race where I like trained like a big kid.
Well, your training recently has been training like a big kid, so who's not to say 6:25 at Lake Sonoma's not possible?
I mean, yeah, you're right. It's training in the winter sucks.
I know you guys have been getting more snow than it looks like normal.
I ran in the snow yesterday and I'm like so over it.
Hey, but you do well in the heat, so.
Yes, when I saw that the temperatures were going up, I was stoked about that because, yeah, I mean, you just like let it be 100 on Lake Sonoma. That's fine.
One last thing to say on the men's side. Again, sources have been telling us that Jim Walmsley is interested in submitting a resume. Jared Hazen, Adrian McDonald, Matt Seidel, who's in this race, Rich Lockwood, I think Drew Holman, maybe Cody Reed. So in addition to those potential resume folks, with the 3 that get the spots here next Saturday, Brett, do you think that we're looking at not just 1 gold on the women's side, but 2 gold medals in the 80K race at Worlds in June, potentially? It's
interesting to like look at the kind of the podiums that have gotten picked out on versus the men's and the women's side. And I think the women's podium, I think makes a better Worlds team than our men's podium for the Worlds course. And that's not out of speculation. I mean, you could speculate and say like, oh, well, these guys could definitely run really well, but it's like of our women's podium that we all picked, all of them have thrown down legit mountain results where it's like, if they just did that again at Worlds and then you add a couple other, like, Claire Gallagher, it's like, you probably have a gold medal. I don't know if the same could be said exactly on the men's side. I mean, I think then it would be headlined by Caleb Olson. Drew's done some, pretty great big races, but I don't know if any of them have been quite in that like massive mountain type setting. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but and then same like you guys both had Ryan Miller on your podium, which like that I feel like this Lake Sonoma course is a big jump up in difficulty in terms of vert from races that he's had success at in the past. So, you know, I think there's again, like if the men's field gets thrown into the actual world's course next weekend, I think the podiums look completely different and perhaps better suited for the actual world's course. You know, with that being said, there's time to train for worlds. So that's important. But yeah, again, kind of just goes back to like, yeah, Sonoma's kind of a strange worlds qualifier course, but at the same time, it's kind of one of the best options that exists prior to an early June worlds. I guess maybe that's part of the root of the problem is worlds is at the beginning of June. That's kind of strange because usually the like big global championships and other sports are towards the end of the year, as you know, it's like the finale to the season, which was how worlds was last year, and putting it at the beginning of June does not do that.
I'll say one final thought and then I'll give you all the mic before we sign off. My final thought for this whole thing is actually looking forward to the World Championships in June in Austria. And all I can think about is how this is going to be another demonstration of how ultra running, how trail running can be a team sport. And in my opinion, how much cooler it is when it becomes a team sport, all the dynamics that are added in, racing not just for yourself, but for your fellow competitors, your country, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully this sows more seeds into all the athletes in our sport and the operators to how cool that can be. And hopefully we evolve from it into other areas of the sport. So that's what I have to say. Brett, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I would love to see worlds continue to gain momentum and like, you know, people donning the USA kit. Yeah, I mean, the whole idea behind that's cool. And the one thing that's also unique about the World Championships is it's one of the few elite only trail races in our sport where it's a chance for most people to just watch. You know, even at something like Western states, you know, maybe there's 50 people in the elite field. There's still 300 people that don't get to watch the race because they're in it. You know, UTMB, it's a larger number, but worlds, like pretty much all the fans of the sport just get to go watch it now. And that's kind of a cool, unique thing. So that's why I'm excited about getting more excited about, you know, just like the whole world mountain running championships. And I mean, last year, like, yeah, you guys made it look really cool last year.
Yeah, hats off, Leah. You've had the experience. What was it like and what are your final thoughts?
Oh, it was so cool. And I think it like lives up to the hype that you saw last year. It was like a hands down lifetime experience. So I want everybody to experience it. And I think, yeah, each location is going to have a different vibe to it. So I think Austria is going to be incredible. And I'm really excited to be out at Lake Sonoma next weekend to see all the action go down as a fly on the wall. And I'm so happy to not be racing. It's going to just wine country.
Yeah, you just get to hang out, sip on some wine, fill that hydro flask.
Honestly, that sounds way better than racing.